Hello and welcome to this lesson for CPI 111. In this lesson, we're going to learn about parent and child objects inside GameMaker. Incredibly useful bit of functionality in GameMaker and essentially sort of a soft introduction to some object-oriented programming, specifically the idea of inheritance. So, what we're going to build as part of learning about using parent and child objects is a partial space shooter game. Let me show you where we're going to end up at the end of this walkthrough today. We're going to have a spaceship shooting game where we fire upon asteroids that are flying around. If we hit an asteroid, we lose some health. If we destroy all the asteroids on a given level before losing all of our health, then we'll go on to the next level in the game, where it gets much harder. Now let me show you where we're starting. Here is the starter project that you can download from the course Blackboard site. I'll tell you exactly where to get it in class, but you should be able to find it pretty easily there. Not much happening inside the starter game. I'll quickly show you what we've got. So we've got a spaceship that can fly around, and it can fire laser beams, just like the finished game. And we've got two spinning asteroids. Right now they don't move or do anything else. And when I fire at them, nothing happens. But if I hit one, then it gets destroyed and I lose some health. So inside the starter game, I've already brought in all the sprites that you're going to need. We've got 3 different versions of a ship, and we're actually only going to use one of these versions. And I've got an explosion sprite, laser sprite, and 3 different asteroid sprites. Got sounds that we're going to use for the game. Got a couple of different backgrounds, and I'll talk about something new with these backgrounds in this game than what we've experienced in the past in just a minute. And in terms of objects, I've brought in our ship. I've created a ship object, laser object, controller, explosion, and 3 asteroids. And we'll take a look at those in more depth in just a moment also. And then, of course, we've got our room. And we have a controller object. All right, let's quickly look through the objects that we have so far. We've got our ship. And I won't go through all of its events, but they're already pre-populated for you, everything you're going to need in this game. Nothing particularly new. We've got a step event here that is going to check if our ship has reached the top of the screen or if it's reached the bottom of the screen. That's why we're checking the Y position of the ship object. And if we're at the top of the screen, then we're going to have the ship start moving back down again. And if we're at the bottom of the screen, the ship will start moving back up. That's to prevent the ship from exiting off the top or bottom of the screen. Then we've got a whole collection of keyboard events, left, right, up, down, and no key. And these are to allow our ship to move up, down, left, or right, and also to show the appropriate sub-image from our ship sprite. So you can see here is the left keyboard event, and when we click on that left key on the keyboard, then it's going to show the 0 sub-image of our ship sprite. Now let me show you what I mean. So if I come up to our sprites over here, here's our 3rd ship, and if I click on edit, you'll see that this ship sprite consists of 5 sub-images. And so the events associated with the keyboard presses for that ship, it's just simply picking which one of these we want to see. If the ship's going right, it's going to show the right leaning one, left, the left leaning one, and then if no key is pressed, then we're going to show the straight up and down one. We have an outside room event to have our ship wrap if it goes off the left side or the right side, and then we've got a key press event for the spacebar to fire one of our laser beam objects. All right. Let's look at the laser beam object. Here we have a create event, and we are going to change the sprite essentially to the sprite that's already assigned, but using this change sprite action lets us choose the speed at which we want the sub-images to animate on that laser beam sprite. And I've set it to 0.1 so that it will animate quite slowly. Looking at the laser beam sprite, you'll see that it consists of 3 sub-images, a little short version of the laser beam, a medium one, and a long one. And so we're just going to slowly, when we fire a laser, we'll see this one first, and then as it moves up the screen, we'll see this one, and as it gets towards the top of the screen, we'll see this longer version of the laser beam image. We play a little firing laser beam sound, and then we start moving up toward the top of the screen. We've got an outside room event that will just destroy the instance of the laser beam. And we have an animation end event where if the player shoots off a laser beam, what we want to have happen is for the animation to play just one time, and then when it reaches that final sub-image, which is sort of the elongated version of the laser beam, we want to just keep with that final sub-image for the rest of the time that the laser beam is showing up on the screen. And that's what this change sprite image does. It selects that final sub-image, sets the speed to 0 so the animation will stop playing. All right, that's it for the laser beam. Our controller object has a step event that is checking if the player's health is 0, and if so, then we're going to restart the game. And then we've got just a part of some actions that we're going to add to here in a moment. These are ones we've used in the past, this go to next room action. And what we need to do is we're going to check if the player has destroyed all of the asteroids in the room, and if there is a next room, then we'll go to that next room. So we're missing the part where we check how many asteroids are left, and we'll add that in just a minute. We have a game start event doing sort of traditional game start stuff here on our controller. We're going to check if the background music is not playing, then we'll start it. And we're going to set the player's health to 100 when the game starts. And then we're going to do a draw GUI event and draw the health bar on the screen. We have an explosion object with a create event which plays the explosion sound, stops the explosion from moving, and then changes the sprite again into the same sprite that's already associated with the object, but this allows us to control its speed. So we're going to play it at half speed. And an animation end event that will cause this explosion object to be destroyed when it reaches the end of its animation. And you can see here that the explosion sprite consists of 9, or rather I should say 10 sub-images. And by default it's playing pretty fast, so we'll play it at half speed. Now we're down to our asteroid objects. A big one, a medium one, and a small one. Each of these has been set up with part of the events and actions that we're going to need to have ultimately in the game, and we'll add to them as we go through this lesson. Mainly we just have a collision event currently to take care of what happens if the asteroid collides with the ship. And if it collides with the big ship, we'll go ahead and destroy the asteroid, and we'll play an explosion sound, and we'll dock some health from the player. 20% of their health for the big asteroid. Medium one is essentially the same thing. We'll destroy the asteroid and we'll knock off 10 points, or 10 health, I should say. And the small asteroid as well. We'll destroy the asteroid and knock off 5 points. So that's where we are right now. The point of this game is to do parenting. So let me talk a little bit next about how that works. So what's the point of using parent objects and child objects inside GameMaker? You can think about it like this. So in this game right now, we've got 3 different asteroids. And if we consider how these 3 different asteroids work, really much of the actions and events associated with like the big asteroid are going to be exactly the same actions and events that we have on the medium asteroid, and the exact same actions are going to be on the small asteroid. So going by how we have developed games up to this point, what I would need to do is add events and actions to the big asteroid, and then go to the medium asteroid and add the exact same collection of events and actions, and then yet a third time add the same events and actions for our asteroid that's the small size. A cool and powerful use of parent and child objects in GameMaker is that I can create a parent object, and in that parent object I can create events and actions that will be shared or inherited by any child objects of that parent object. So for example, if every time the laser is going to hit one of the asteroids, same thing's going to happen. The asteroid's going to explode, and we'll have a nice explosion effect, and we'll destroy the asteroid, and we'll turn the laser image into an explosion object, and so on. All of those events are going to be the same for the big asteroid, the medium asteroid, and the small asteroid. Well, by creating the parent asteroid, we can just create all of those events and actions once, and then assign all of our big, medium, and small asteroid objects as children of that parent, and they'll automatically inherit those events so that we don't have to re-enter them again and again. Further, the children of a parent object in GameMaker can inherit some of the events and actions of its parent, but not all of them. If, for example, we want a child object to behave differently in response to a collision, let's say, we could create a collision event in the child object, and what GameMaker will do is it will see that there's a collision event on the child object, and it will use that event instead of using the exact same event that's on the parent. So GameMaker will look first to the child, and if there's something there, it'll use that. And if there is no event on the child, it will look to the parent, and if there is an event on the parent, GameMaker will make use of that event. You can also mix things up a little bit by having a child object use some of the actions associated with a specific event that are on its parent, but then to not use other actions that are associated with the parent. It's a little difficult to envision, but we're going to see exactly what that looks like now. There are different ways to do it in GameMaker. You can create a parent object and then have that parent object be out in the game, and then have a bunch of children objects as well. It's probably more common, though, to define a parent object in GameMaker that never actually goes into your room. It's purely a parent that's set there as a collection of definitions, a template, essentially, of events and actions. And then the only thing that goes out into the room, into the game itself, are the descendants of that parent, the children. I'll show you how to set that up next. Let's start by making a parent object for our 3 asteroid objects. The procedure is no different for making a parent object than anything else. You just create an object. We'll call this one obj_asteroid parent. And as I've mentioned, what we're going to do is we're going to create a parent object that itself is not actually ever going to exist inside our game. So just like our manager objects, we don't need to have any sprite associated with this. Now think for a minute what it is we want our asteroids to do. And specifically, as we're making a parent for them, we want to think about all those things that all of those asteroids should do. And those are the kinds of events that we're going to place inside the parent, because those events will then be available to the children. So, one thing we know we need all asteroids to do is move around the screen. So let's do that. I'll do an add event, a create event, and then I'll add in a move free, and I'll set the direction to be, let's do random 360, because we want it to go any direction. And then for speed, I could also make this random, but just to make it easy, I'll just set it as 4. So when the asteroid is created, it'll move around, and it's going to move it at 4 for its speed. All right, what else do we need to have all of our asteroids do? Well, they're all going to end up colliding with the laser, so we can create an event for that. This will be a collision with the laser object. So what's going to happen when any of our asteroids are hit by a laser? Well, we're going to destroy the asteroid that gets hit, and we're also going to destroy the laser, and we're going to show a little explosion at the location where the collision between the laser and the asteroid occurs. So there are different ways to make this happen, but here's how I'm going to work it here, and you can use this same method. So first I'm going to do a destroy instance, and what I'm going to destroy is other, meaning the laser. So that's how we're going to get rid of the laser. And I'm going to change the asteroid itself that gets hit into an instance of the explosion object. That's how we'll show the explosion. So I can go to change instance, and I'm going to change into that explosion object. And on the explosion object, we have a create event, and I'd like to perform that event. So I say yes to perform events. Also, I want to have the asteroid stop moving so that the explosion occurs right at the point of impact and doesn't continue to move in the direction that the asteroid was moving before it got hit. So I'm going to add in a move event. It's going to be a move fixed. I'll set the direction to just stop, essentially, with the speed being 0. All right. Anything else that we need all of our asteroids to do? Well, yes, we want our asteroids to do a wrap around if they go off the left or right part of the screen, or the top or the bottom. Now, in the past, in previous projects, I've just used the wrap screen action. But I want to start to move towards more use of the scripting language in GameMaker. And so we're going to, for the first time here, introduce the use of scripting rather than using one of the built-in actions. But we'll still use the built-in event. So I'm going to add in a step event that's going to keep track of, if the asteroid needs to wrap. So it's going to be checking constantly where that asteroid exists. Now, if I want to add in some scripting, I can come down to the Control tab, and you'll see here's this code section. And in the code section, I can execute code, which means basically I can just write some code right in here, or I can point to a script that exists and execute it that way. We're going to start off here by using this execute code action. And then I'm going to quickly just paste in some code here, and I'll talk through briefly what it does. We're going to be going through in class GML in some detail, and I'm not doing that yet, but I just want to get you familiar with seeing it. So here, basically, we have a collection of if statements and else statements. And all I'm doing really is I'm checking where the asteroid is. Each object inside GameMaker is going to have an X coordinate and a Y coordinate, and that tells where it is, or where its origin point is, in the room at any given moment. And so here, basically what we're doing is we're checking, the script is going to be on our asteroid, and so it's going to check where is the position, the X position for the asteroid at this moment. And here we're checking where is the Y position of the asteroid at this moment. And then what we're doing here is we're saying if the X position is less than the width of the sprite that is associated with this game object times -1, that means basically that we must have reached the left-hand side of the screen. Now remembering that if the X is like 0, that means the asteroid is right at the left-hand side of the screen. But what we're doing here is we're saying, well, we want to know what is the width of the sprite that's associated with this object. And then we're just going to apply a negative value to it. And so what this means is that we're not going to make the object wrap around right when it hits 0, because then you'd still actually see it on the screen. It would look like it disappears and then reappears on the right-hand side. So we're going to go a little beyond the left-hand side of the screen by the width of that sprite associated with the object. And then we're going to reposition it. We're going to set the X over to the width of the room plus the width of the sprite -4. Now this is a little confusing. So we've got the width of the room, that's pretty clear. And then the width of the sprite is going to take us totally outside the room. But then we're just going to just back it up just a little so that you just see a touch of the sprite reappearing on the right-hand side. Right? And all the rest of this is doing the same kind of checking, only it's now checking if we're on the right-hand side. Here we're checking if we're at the top of the screen, and here we're checking if we're at the bottom of the screen. Okay. So I wanted to do that as well. Finally, I want to have all of our objects include a collision. I guess we already did that, didn't we? So that's it. So we're set up in terms of having our parent object with all the events and actions that we want. And these, again, are going to be all of the things that we want all of our asteroids to do. Although when we get into each of these other asteroids, we're free to override some of these events if we wish. And we're free also to make use of some of this stuff and not other parts. So let me show you how that works. Let's go ahead and open up the big asteroid. And remembering that we already have some events and actions built in here, or rather we have an individual event. But what I want to do is I want to make this big asteroid the child of the parent asteroid that we just created. This is really easy to do. So here, looking at the properties for our big asteroid object, you'll see there's a section called Parent. If I click on the drop-down box, I can choose the object that I want to be the parent, and I want it to be the parent asteroid object. Just like that, our big asteroid is now the child of that object. I also want to modify this existing event just a bit. So I'm going to come over to my list of actions, and what we want to have happen if the laser hits that asteroid, or rather in this case if the ship hits the asteroid, we want that to break up that asteroid, and what will happen is we want it to break up the big asteroid and produce two medium-sized asteroids. So we need to add in that piece right here. We're destroying already the big asteroid, that's happening right here, to create a couple of medium asteroids. We can just do a create instance. So we come here, add in create instance, and the one we're going to create is going to be the medium asteroid, and we'll place it right where our big asteroid was. So we choose 0, 0, and then relative. And I just basically want to do the same thing. So I can come here and copy it and then paste it. And just like that, I've created 2 medium asteroids. Okay. I'd also like to create a collision with the laser. Now, we did this already, if you remember, in our asteroid parents, we created a collision with the laser. So what we're going to do here is we'd like to call in the some of the event and action that occurred on our asteroid parent, but then we want to essentially overwrite it for this child to perform things somewhat differently. So here's how we can do that. I'm going to add an event, collision with the laser. And what I want to have happen is that I want to bring in the collision event that exists on the asteroid parent. So if I want to do that, I need to come here to the Control tab, and you'll see this call parent event. I drag that over, and basically this is telling GameMaker, hey, I'm a child object. I'm creating a collision event, and normally that would mean that we're going to ignore the parent version of the collision event, but here I'm saying, no, I actually want to use what's inside that parent event. But we're going to go further than what's in the parent event. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of instances. So bring in an instance. It's going to be the medium asteroid position relative. And just like I did a minute ago, I'm going to create a copy of that and paste it in. All right. So inside this collision event, really all you see happening here is that we're going to create a couple of medium asteroids. But because we're telling GameMaker I want to use what's in the parent, we're also going to destroy the instance. We're going to change our asteroid into the explosion object, and we're going to stop it from moving. So that all gets carried over into the child. So we're going to do essentially the exact same thing with our medium asteroid. We're going to come in to the collision with a ship event, and we're going to add in create instance. Now though, we're going to create the small asteroid positioned at 0, 0 relative, and we'll copy that, and then we're going to paste it, and we're going to paste it again because we want to create 3 of the little asteroids. So when the medium-sized asteroid nails the ship, it's going to break apart and then create 3 little asteroids. And that's all we need to do. Oh, wait a minute. We don't have a laser event here. We need that as well if we're going to override things. So I'm going to add a collision with the laser object. I'm going to choose to call the parent collision event here. And then I'm going to do what we just did a minute ago. In fact, I could probably just come in here and paste because I already have it in there. Okay. Create 3 of those child objects, and we call the parent event as well. And I need to remember, if I want to call an inherited event, this medium asteroid needs to be the child of wherever it is I'm going to call the event. So again, I need to choose that asteroid parent as the parent for this medium asteroid. Okay. Similarly, we need to open up our small asteroid, and we're actually not going to change the events and actions here at all, but we are going to make it a child of our asteroid parent, and that will allow us to make use of its collision event with the laser. We're just not going to modify it, so we don't have to do anything, and it still will react to the collision with the laser. All right. We still have a few pieces left to do to make this be a little bit more complete, but we've just done quite a bit. So let's test out what's happening now in our game. Now our asteroids fly around, and if I fire on it, it breaks up into a couple of different little medium asteroids. If I fire on those, breaks up into the little ones. I get a nice collision sound. If I get hit, I lose health. But if I get rid of all the asteroids, nothing happens. So we want to make the game check how many asteroids are left out in the field. And if there aren't any asteroids left, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next room in the game, if there is a next room. So let's first set up a new room. I'm just going to take our existing room, right-click on it, and choose Duplicate. Then I'm going to come and just make it a little harder by adding more asteroids to it. All right. Now, to do this check, we get to see again the power of using parent and child objects. I'm going to go back to our object controller and take a look at the step event. Right now, we have a check here that says if there is a room that exists next, go to that room. Well, we now have a room, but there is no action that ever really gets us to this point. What we need to do is to check if there are any asteroids left in the room. If you're not using parent and child objects, what you would need to do is include instance checks to check. You would need instance checks to check for each object that's out in your room. So I would need an instance check to see if there are any big asteroids, one for the medium asteroids, one for the small asteroids, etc., etc., etc. But we've got that parent object, so I can take this test instance count action, drag it right before the room check. And I want to see how many asteroid parents there are. Now, of course, there are no asteroid parents. There are none that are actually in the room. But remember that the children of this asteroid parent inherit from that parent. So that if I say I want to check how many asteroid parents there are, and if there are 0, I'm going to go to the next room. What it means is that it will not only check for an asteroid parent, which there aren't any, but it's going to check for how many big asteroids there are, how many medium asteroids there are, and how many small asteroids there are, all within this single check. And if there are 0, and if there's another room, it will go to that room. So I'll save that, and I'll show you quickly what this looks like. We start off in our first room. If I destroy all the asteroids in this room, it takes me automatically to the next room. And if I destroy all the asteroids in this room, it shouldn't do anything because there are no more rooms after this. Now, in a real game, of course, I'd want to go in and add more levels. I'd want to put in a finish room or a you win room if I've completed the final level of a given game, etc., etc., etc. But for now, we'll leave our game at this point. And that's it. So when you are practicing this on your own, and when you are developing your own game, really think carefully as you begin to structure the way things are going to work in your game. Where does use of parent and child objects save you effort? Where does it make the game more manageable? And incorporate that use in, because it ultimately will save you lots of time. Have fun with this. As you're working on it yourself, try out some new things. You could add in enemy ships that appear at random and that fire on the hero ship. Basically a version of what we did in our very first game where we brought in the bombs at random that would appear. You could add in a shield for the main ship that the player perhaps could press a key on their keyboard in order to turn on a shield, but the shield loses power if it stays on. You could have fuel items that appear and move around the screen, and if the player runs into those, they regain fuel for their shield. Oh gosh, you could add swarming little mini ships that appear when the player hits certain asteroids and that chase after the ship. There's lots and lots of possibilities, so have fun with it. Incorporate those parent and child objects.